you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back, everyone. As some of you may know, I recently returned from ZeniMax Online Studios, and 12 of us actually got the opportunity to play the new Elsweyr chapter in its early stages. Checking out the Necro class, the dragons, the trial, and all that good stuff as well. So here I'm going to show you some actual in-game footage of the new update. Now, of course, we have to start with the tutorial, because, of course, there is a new tutorial for Elsweyr, just like there is with every chapter. You'll have to excuse the robot voices, because the voice acting hasn't been done for this yet, and also some glitches are here. So if you see any animals or creatures or animations acting a little bit weird, that's normal. It's in the early stages. Now, in most tutorials, you get your basic kind of quest guy, you get your weapons that you have to find, and then you kind of go through the basic stuff before you go out into the real world. And this is no different, but this tutorial is a little bit more user-friendly, I might add, because as we've got here, you can see that this alters your camera perspective, which was in Somerset, but it wasn't in any of the previous updates or anything like that. So that's really, really helpful for new players. But above all, there's two mechanics in this game, several different ones, but there's two major ones in the form of block and interrupt that most people don't even bother paying attention to. And then you see these people that are really, really high level and have no idea how to interrupt the target. Well, that is actually over-explained in here, and for the better as well. And also some of the really important stuff, like what happens when something is off balance and you heavy attack it and all that good stuff. So it's been not over-explained in a sense that it makes people sound like an idiot, but it is done in such a way that kind of forces you to go, okay, now I get it. So this guy here is kind of your combat dude. He's going to give you some training. You can actually fight him, and he tells you to do stuff with basic controls, which most people just skip the once and then move on. Well, he forces you to do it actually 3 times, unless you do it wrong, in which case you have to do it more. So this is actually very, very beneficial, especially for the newer player as well. So it explains to you what happens when you block, what happens when you interrupt, and also what happens if you heavy attack someone that has bounced off your block and received an off-balance debuff. So it's really, really handy indeed. So not only have they made a really, really visually pleasing environment in terms of lore and aesthetics and all that good stuff, but they've also given a very decent tutorial as well, where you do have to actually pay attention this time to what you're doing rather than just treat it as a quick time event, press the buttons and forget about it. I think the tutorial itself is a bit longer than Somerset, possibly about as long as the one in Morrowind, but I don't spoil all of it for you. I do actually skip some of it so that you don't get to see all of the scenery. You get to see some of it. You can see this outside area, and there's some corridor type areas as well where it's very, very good looking. There's lots and lots of shiny stuff to see. Plenty of backpacks and that to loot as well. As a new player, you can just run in and start getting loot and money, but I won't spoil it all, of course. Now, you've still got your rewards you claim for leveling up and stuff like that. That's all still in there, so nothing's changed there. No base game changes to anything like that. But this is a very, very inviting tutorial indeed, especially in comparison with the previous ones. Now, of course, when you get to level 1, you actually unlock your first skills. And as you can see, I'm a Necromancer, so I'm going to go deeper into that in a moment, where I actually go through some of the skills out in the open world. But to start with, obviously, when I went to Bethesda in London, which is where this recording is from, I got to make a character first, do the tutorial, and then make a template. Now, this part here is very important. If you don't know where all the combat buttons are, on PC, go down to settings and go in combat, and you can actually change and show your buff timers and your percentages to health bars and all that good stuff. And on console, this is the console interface for it. You need to go down to combat in the options, and all your options are here. Now, this has been in the game the whole time, but I'm just going to show this for those that don't actually know, because it's something that I get asked a lot on the live streams. Where are these buttons? How come you've got all these add-ons on console? I don't have add-ons. I'm on PC at the moment on this particular video, but this is the console interface, so you can see exactly where it is on console. Now, you've also obviously got your friendly colors and your enemy colors, and you can change the brightness of them and everything like that. So if it does not suit you that the enemy area of effects are red, you can change them to what you want, and the friendly ones as well, anything you want to do. So that is all in here. So for those of you that don't actually know, this is kind of my opportunity to kind of put it into a video so you can see it. So go into options, go down to combat, all your buttons are there. But for this stuff, it's in gameplay. Now, you are going to see a dragon in here. You are definitely going to see a dragon. I'm not going to show you the roaming dragons, because unfortunately I tried to find them while I was in Bethesda, but I couldn't find one. But look at that above your head. There he goes. We're going to go chase him down. Now, this is all part of the tutorial as well, so you do get to kind of dive straight in, find the dragon at level 1, which is very, very fun indeed. Now this part here I do skip a little bit so you don't see too much, because I don't want to give too many spoilers away. But basically they'll teach you to sneak, how to kill stuff, and then you go through this winding corridor type place to get out to the other side. So I'll let this run, and in the meantime go over some of the stuff we saw. Open world stuff, we saw pretty much everything. There was a few people that did quests, a few of us checked out the new user interface, some of us checked out the skills and the Necromancer, and then obviously the rest of us were still roaming around trying to find dragons and such. Now, just to confirm, the dragons do roam around. They are not static like most world bosses, and there are world bosses as well. There are world bosses and dragons. And those dragons, although we can't show one of the world type ones today, are quite challenging. If you're very, very experienced, it's still going to take a few of you to start with to take it down. We did it with, I think, between 4 and 8 people at any given time, and they were really, really big fights. Flying up in the air and stuff and all that. Dramatic effects of them trying to get away, come back in, and there's plenty of mechanics. I'm not going to go too far into the mechanics of them, obviously, because you can't see them, but they're very, very fun. They cover a lot of ground, and you could, like in Skyrim, literally just be running around, minding your own business, and a dragon lands. So for those of you looking forward to that, it is a thing. It does happen. Now, the trial itself is not in this particular video, but we did get to try it out. We did get to test it. We saw the entire thing from start to finish, and the only thing I can really say about it is comparison to others. So size-wise, enemy difficulty and mechanics and all that kind of stuff, we're probably looking at more of Lorcage, which has already been mentioned before. I think Finn mentioned it on the live stream, or even Rich maybe, saying how that was the intention. They did manage to do that very, very well. It feels the same sort of size, similar sort of feel as well with all the Khajiit kind of stuff, especially with all the new architecture as well. It's very reminiscent of more of Lorcage, but there are 3 dragons. And each one, as you may already know, has its individual hard mode. Not going to spoil it by saying the dragons' names or what they do, but you are looking forward to 3 major dragons in that particular trial, and they are immense. Massive fights with a huge area to fight in, so it's not a stack and burn fest like most people see in some of the older trials for like Craglorn and stuff like that. This is very mechanic heavy, and you have to keep moving and coordinate as a group. So movements wise, I would probably put it on par with perhaps Cloud Rest. Not so much the stacking on Zamaja's tail, but the moving around, all the different things happening at once, all the different complications of this effect means this and this effect means that, stay together, split up, stay together, split up, that kind of stuff. There is lots of that going on, and some of them are familiar mechanics, and some of them are stuff you've never ever seen before, and they are absolutely insane. As you can see here, we have encountered our first dragon. Now, this is obviously just for the tutorial's sake, so we're not actually going to kill it, but it does give us an opportunity to practice what you learned with your training buddy or your sparring partner a little while ago in the beginning of the tutorial. So your blocks, your interrupts, and your staying out of stupid is now very, very important. As you can see, the dragon will hit you a lot, which you have to block, and he will throw out heavy attacks, which you have to block, and also big AoEs on the ground, which you need to stay out of. You'll notice if you go round him, he will get really, really mad and start trying to flap you with his wings. That was a weird animation. That won't be in the finished product. There are some visuals that look quite hilarious with some of the enemies at the moment, but that's all because it's just a work in progress. But they're coming. Anyway, once you've dealt with that dragon, you'll be back out again, and then it's pretty much the end of the quest, so to speak. You have a couple more things to do and a couple people to talk to, then you go out into the real world, which you're going to see in a moment. Now, the open world is, again, surprisingly very different from that of other chapters. If you consider sizes of the chapters, we'll go as far as Orsinium, although it wasn't strictly a chapter, it was a very large land mass of space, if you like. That was covered in snow. Morrowind was then kind of a big volcano in the middle, some nice colours, lots of swampy areas as well, plus some kind of beachy coral type areas near the Telvanni towers and stuff like that. Then you had Somerset, which was bright as hell, like a souped up Auradon. And now we have this. Now this is obviously very similar to that of Reaper's March in some respects, as it's covered in Khajiit architecture. But it's not the same as what you've seen before. The Khajiit architecture in Reaper's March is obviously something that you've seen before. You know it very well. You can notice it straight away. Now here you can recognize the stuff as Khajiit, but because there are so many different types of Khajiit, and this is kind of their homeland, this is very different, very ancient looking, and more solid. Instead of little caravan sites here and there that are constantly on the move, these look like they are set in stone, quite literally. Ignore that funny, hilarious load screen. That's what happens when you play the non-finished version. There's a couple of statues there that aren't quite finished as well, but you can see their shape, and I hope to God they put those in the crown store at some point. They're really, really cool. Now, as you can see, look at this. This is vast as hell. Absolutely insane. Full of color. Now, I know lots of people thought that this was going to be barren, desert, and boring, and dead, and all the rest of it. It's really colorful with that as a base. Like, in mind, you thought it was just going to be rocks. There are rocks. There are mountains, and there's all that stuff, but it's nothing in comparison to what we've seen before. It's not quite as bland color-wise as Abba's Landing. Or Abba's Watch. It's not as flat as Reaper's March, and it still has that different feel to the chapter. It's another page in the book that looks completely different from the last, if that makes any sense whatsoever. It's very, very cool looking indeed. Now, of course, when I came to here with this particular character, it was kind of a little look around, hit a couple of enemies, and I'd got a recording of the tutorial and the basics of just leaving the main area and kind of going out into the world. I then made a templated character, so you're going to see a full max CP Necromancer, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the skills, because I know people have been screaming about this class for a very, very long time. So lucky for you, I have managed to get a couple of recordings, not all of them. I will put all of the skills in a separate video, because I do have all of those documented, and I do have screenshots for every single one, but I will show you some of the skills and how they're applied. Now, the thing with the Necromancer is there are a lot of skills that create corpses, and there are a lot of skills that need corpses. So, for example, you can see I've got a pet beside me, wherever he's gone, and he is an archer. There's a different morph for that for Magicka, and if he dies, or you unsummon him and resummon him, or whichever, he will create a corpse on the ground. Now, there are some abilities that can kind of siphon energy from that and place damage AoEs on the ground. There are some that you can heal off of. There are some that you can take ultimate off of. There's lots and lots of different skills that benefit you as long as there are corpses. So this is a very challenging class to use. So if you're on a stack and burn fest and it's just one target, you don't have any corpses around you to take advantage of. So you have to change your skill set in order to place corpses down, or wait for people to die, in order to utilize them. It's very, very cool indeed. As you saw that I used an ability and just placed it on the ground, and it came out of that corpse. Now that's a negative AoE. It actually goes onto the enemy and does a massive damage over time effect to anyone caught in it. But not only that, there was a beam attached to me. I think I do it here again. You should see the same effect when I hit another target. But what it does is between you and the beam, if any enemies cross it, you do damage. So all you need is a corpse. So you can actually kill your pet, resummon him, and you use it again. There you go. There's the circle. Anything caught in that circle, or between you and the circle with that beam, will take huge damage. There's magical morphs, there's stam morphs, there's lots and lots of different things I'll get into in another video, but they are very, very nice indeed. We've got the pet, we've got an ability called Blast Bones, which has got 2 morphs to it as well, where you literally just spawn a skeleton and tell him, get him. And he will run after the target, and as soon as he reaches them, he'll just blow to bits. Now, the funny part about that skill is not only is it very high damage, and it does area of effect as well as direct damage, but that skeleton blew up. So it's dead. So it's a corpse. So you can use it with your skills. You can blow things up with a skeleton and then use the body to benefit yourself. Now, this guy, obviously I'm hitting these NPCs here. They are dying because I'm attacking them. But initially I got a bounty on them because I cast a Necromancer ability next to them. Now, some of these are a little bit buggy. It's not supposed to affect everybody. But if you're near guards and you use a Necromancer skill, you will get a bounty. Whether it's a buff or an attack, it doesn't matter if you're using any skill. Now, it's not all skills, it's certain ones. They are labeled as criminal act if you use them, but like I said, some of them are actually buffs. So you could sit there just spamming buffs which you think are not going to hurt anyone, and then straight away a guard will slap you in the face. So be very careful around guards when you're using these abilities. Now, of course, you can see that I'm actually on a stamina character, of course. I normally am, although this is risky business because this is pushing my main character, which is a Stam DK, down to the bottom of the pile. So he might be gone now, but we'll see. But we're now going deeper into Elsweyr. This is kind of an open plain area, but this is where I start messing around with some skills. We don't see any world bosses in this particular one, but I will show you what some of the extra skills do. Now, this ultimate, these ultimates are insane. This Colossus, you don't get a very good demonstration of it here, but you do get to see it happen. It doesn't last very long, but when you fire it, a massive Colossus comes out, smashes the ground in area effect. So anyone caught in that is going to get hit really, really, really hard. And here's the selling point for this ultimate. When it is activated, it applies major, listen carefully, major vulnerability to the targets affected. That is the first and only major vulnerability buff in the game. Minor vulnerability comes from concussion and lightning effects and infallible ether and scavenging, whatever the hell the set was called recently. There are a few ways to apply it, but this is actually a major vulnerability. So this actually stacks. Now, currently, if you want to know what the stats are for that, major vulnerability for you and your group is 30% increase to damage. So although this is a very short duration ultimate, there he is, slamming the ground. If you have multiples, then that can massively increase the DPS output of your group. So that one ultimate is absolutely insane. Not to mention, there's an ability on my bar at the moment on the RB, or the number 5. When you're near corpses, if you activate that, you will heal and you will generate ultimate. It's like a Necromancer Repentance. Instead of giving you stamina back and health, it gives you health back and ultimate per corpse. That can be used on stamina, magicka, healer, tank, it doesn't matter. You can use it on anything. So while ultimates may seem short durated but expensive, you can build ultimate very, very, very fast. As you can see, I'm almost ready to use it again. I've only killed a couple of enemies. I've got it up straight away. So it has very high ability to gain ultimate fast and ability to gain resources fast if the bodies are around. And that's where the difficulty of the class comes in. You have to have the bodies. So like I said on stack and burn bosses, where it's just one single target and that is it, if there's no bodies around, apart from maybe if your friends die, you have to supply the corpses yourself. So you have to recast pets, use bone blasts and stuff like that. All these different abilities. Now we're going to show off the big one. We're going to use the ultimate that transforms you into a bone Goliath. A massive, massive construct. Now I've got 30k extra health. And if I hit anything, I heal. And if anything is near me, I heal. And I can use my full rotation. So last 20 seconds, you can't gain ultimate while you're in it. But look at my bars. They don't change. This massive transformation where I go into absolute god mode, I can use my full rotations, my full resources, passives, bonuses, everything, but not die. It is absolutely mental and even crazier in PvP. Now I'm going to show you the Bone Blast ability. This one where you throw a skeleton at a target. You just summon one, tell him to go get him. Look at him. Runs off. Boom. Off he goes. Now that ability underneath his feet, that big AoE there, you've seen it already. That is not the same skill. You make a body and you use another skill to take advantage of the body. It's very, very nice indeed. Now the healing skills are like that as well. I don't do a very in-depth demonstration on this about the healing skills. I believe Kyle Dempster was trying the healing skills out a lot, and Dots was using a lot of the magicka stuff, so you might want to go to those guys if you're interested in any of that stuff, because I know they tried them a lot, and Ninja tried a lot of the tank stuff as well. But the heals can benefit from corpses as well. You can actually siphon energy from dead bodies to heal your group. And one thing of all that is just absolutely crazy is, of course, there is a resurrection ulti, which we anticipated, but there is one. And we got to see this firsthand. Myself, Kev Do It, Dots Gaming, and Wooler were doing dungeons as Necromancers. We had a tank, we had a healer, and we had a couple DPS. I think, in fact, we went 3 DPS on a couple of them. And we all died. We were on Scale Caller, last boss. We all died, except for Wooler. And he popped the res ulti, and all 3 of us instantly got up off the ground. He just hit the ulti, everybody's back in the game. It was absolutely mental. One of those moments where you just look at each other and you're like, this is awesome. It was so bloody cool. And Kyle was using it inside the trials as well. Every time we went down, he would take off ultimate off of dead bodies and then just resurrect mass groups of people. It was nuts. Now, what I'm going to show you is another skill. This is a CC ability, which does frost damage over 10 seconds. So it's quite nice for magicka, very nice for a tank. You can use it as any role if you want, but this is a little bit different to most. You know how the Necromancer so far is very reliant on being self-sufficient by things that are laying around on the floor, taking advantage of corpses and all that kind of stuff. This particular morph of this skill not only CCs, not only... Did you see that? not only does damage, but you can take your own synergy. You can actually take your own synergy. So it supplies the synergy to the group, which does area of effect frost damage, which remember, of course, can have status effects happening, which is handy. But you can take your own synergy. So if you're using something, I don't know, for argument's sake, let's throw it out there because people are going to say it already. Alkosh. Whether you're a DPS or a tank, whichever, I don't care. You can take your own synergy and activate your own set. It's disgusting. It's a very, very cool skill. CC and self synergy. Not just for tanks, DPS as well, if you're using it. And if you're, for example, you're a Magicka DPS and you utilize this as a CC and damage at the same time, and you're using something like Moondancer, you can be in control of your own synergy and decide which one of the two, the recovery or the flat spell damage, you want to take. Things like that. There's lots of things to consider, of course. We're early days, but that's just showing you the base advantages of that particular skill. It's really, really mad. And it consumes a corpse on cast as well, and if it does, it actually does more damage. So this is a very, very nice ground-based, frost-based, area of effect damage and self-buff at the same time. If you're wearing any sets that require synergies, or even if you just need resources, you can take it. Really handy. Remember, Undaunted passive gives you 4% across the board if you take a synergy. Now this one here is a resist buff. This does give you Major Ward and Major Resolve, but this particular morph of it, I will go over the other morphs in a separate video, will pull targets to you. So you don't need to activate any chains or anything like that like you do on the DK. You just have aggro, and if it's ranged or close and it hits you with damage, you will automatically chain it to you. Auto chains. Just like holding block with the set from Spindle Clutch, the spider helmet, where you pull in targets from range. Well, you don't need to block, you just need to be hit. So very interesting indeed. Be interesting to see how that works in multiple different situations. But above all, it's a free chain. What can you whinge about? Really, really fun. We did find a couple of places where it wasn't necessarily that beneficial, but then for situations like that, you can, of course, just use immovable or something like that if you really wanted to, if you're on a tank or something. But still, lots and lots of handy stuff there. There are so many different skills. There's so many large descriptions for them all as well. There's so many ways to do it. And here, look at this, a totem on the ground which fears targets, but not your traditional fear. It fears them stiff. They are stunned. You have an area of effect stun. Look at this. Boom, no one's going anywhere. That's crazy. Imagine that for PvP. Stun everyone on the spot, hit them with the CC, which then does ice damage, take your own synergy and kill them. Crazy. These abilities are not like other classes. They're not like hit with this skill over and over and over, or hit with this skill over and over and over. One skill creates an effect that another effect can synergize, or another ability can synergize off of it. Every opportunity that you have to drop corpses and such, you can use another ability to benefit from it. Every combination almost of skills that you put together can work hand in hand with another. It's very, very strong. Now this ability here is your debuff ability. This is your main ability, but you can kind of get that from the ice anyway. Now if you morph it a certain way, you can actually empower your group. So you can cast Empower on your group for 5 seconds, increasing their light attack damage by 40%. Now before, you would use Glenways or something like that. If you blocked, other people would get a buff. Or for the Templar, you would use Solar Barrage and get a buff. Or for other classes, perhaps you'd use Mage Light. But for the Necromancer, in front of you, you can actually buff your group. However, this does have another bonus to it. If you aim at your pets, you can actually buff your pets. The magical morph ones, the healer ones, you can actually buff their effectiveness by 40%. Now we're looking at the healing tree here a little bit. Some of these aren't really going to show that many stats because I'm using stamina, but they do help nonetheless. So I'm going to show you a couple of them. One of them is actually your healing pet. So you can have your stamina archer pet, which you can morph to magic, by the way, and you can have your healing pet. Now, although that is based off of max magic, it does actually help. It's quite beneficial. And while it's active, look at this. I'm in God mode. I have a healing pet and I have a damage pet, and I can still activate the two. While the healing pet is up, he takes 10% of any damage I take. So when I'm in God mode right now and I can't die, if anything does hit me quite hard, he acts like a very small guard for me. So not is he just helpful for the healers, he's also helpful for a DPS or a tank as well. It's very, very nice. Really, really handy stuff. But obviously the higher Magicka you have, the more beneficial this would be to heal you and others. At the moment it's only 862 a second, but that every 2 seconds rather, but that would be much, much more. Now, when I was at the Bethesda event, or the press event, or press release, in fact, in London, obviously this is the recording from there. So I had an hour to record, so it was tricky kind of get everything all in once. So I borderline showed what I could based on what I'd set up. But there are lots and lots and lots of more things to see. It's absolutely mental. The Necromancer is fun as hell. It is sometimes a little complex in some ways, but if you want to just be spamming and have fun with it, you can also do that as well. Got a bug there. I had to do a quick reload UI. I'm sure you've seen that happen before. So in the next video, I will be showing a full rundown of every single skill and passive, and I think some of you will be quite excited with those. Now, another thing to note is we did try this in PvE and PvP. We tried healers, we tried stamina DPS, we tried mag DPS, we tried tanks, we tried the whole lot. Then we also tried mixing them with other classes and seeing how they synergize off of each other. Some given buffs from their class passives, this guy given buffs from perhaps the ultimate for major vulnerability, all that kind of stuff. Now, we were there for almost a week, so we got to practice with quite a lot of stuff, but there's still going to be plenty of time on the PTS to see everything else. But this hopefully gives you a quick rundown, or quick overview, if you like, of some of the Elsweyr locations in terms of their visuals, and a quick kind of look into the Necromancer itself as a class. PvP, by the way, in Battlegrounds, 36 kills and 16 assists, just saying. It was awesome. Colossus were going off everywhere. It was absolutely mental. Anyway, hopefully that was somewhat insightful. At least you got to see some of the Necromancer, some of Elsweyr, and you got to see a little sneak of a dragon. But there will be obviously some more content coming up, especially when they finally release PTS. Thank you all very much for supporting. If you're not subscribed already, please do hit that button. It is free. A massive thank you to you all. A huge thank you to ZeniMax Online Studios and Bethesda as well for this amazing opportunity. And now I'm going to leave you with the Elsweyr trailer. Bye-bye.
Elsweyr, land of the Khajiit. Here, life should be good, but we suffer 1,000 perils. Our towns and cities crashed beneath the tyrannical rule of the usurper queen. Our farms and villages overrun by hordes of undead. And the very land itself set afire by a rage of dragons. But through the smoke and flames, hope stirs. Heroes emerge, ready to defend Elsweyr against a tide of unending danger. Wielding weapons, spells, and even necromancy to claim victory at all costs.